Hey everybody. Well, I've been putting this off for a while. This is a review of this beautiful, beautiful Gibson standard 50s Les Paul tobacco burst. I haven't played it that much, but I have been playing it quite a bit the last couple of weeks, and I feel like I've really got some interesting things to say about it. I hope you'll consider watching. Yeah, I bought this guitar in 2023 and I haven't played it all that much. It was just so beautiful and it caught my eye, and I've always wanted one, but when I got it, it kind of scares me off to play it. I feel like when I play it, I always, when I sit around in my shorts or whatever and play my guitar on the couch, a Telecaster always seems so comfortable to me, maybe a Strat, And whenever I get this one out, or my Gibson ES335, I always feel like I need to, sit in a straight back chair and, have good posture and all that kind of thing. Because this is definitely a guitar that plays great and ups your game. But I bought this in 2023 and it's just beautiful. It's hard to beat a Gibson for beauty. I always say a Martin and a Gibson are the two most beautiful guitars. Other ones are beautiful too. You can't, a nice Taylor, PRS, they make some beautiful ones, but theirs always feel a little bit, their beauty's just a little bit contrived or factory feeling compared to just the natural beauty of a Martin, all those premier woods and the craftsmanship. That's what makes a Martin so beautiful, and just a good, straightforward, beautiful finish. And I feel kind of like with the Gibson, this is like a work of art. Martin's got a natural beauty. This is like art. This is like elegant and artsy. I know they've played a lot of these in saloons and places of ill repute and stadiums full of all kinds of crazy antics. But I think a nice Gibson, I always think is kind of a classy guitar. You know? Yeah, listen to this thing sing. Those pickups are awesome. Awesome, awesome. But then when I in my late 20s, I bought a really pretty nice Telecaster when I first got married. And then for years, my Telecaster was my main guitar. And over the years, I kind of, as I added to my electric guitar collection, I tended to play Fenders. You know, got a couple Highway 1 Strats and things. And I just never did get around to Gibson too much. And I bought this. This is a beautiful Les Paul. And the other Gibson I bought is a very beautiful Gibson ES 335. But when I started playing it, a couple things. This is the 50s standard, and it had the tobacco burst. There were a couple other colors in the 50s standard, and then there's a 60s standard, and I think the standard is kind of where you've reached a proper Les Paul, a Gibson Les Paul standard. And I know they've got the special and the tribute. I always get those two mixed up, but one of them has P90s, and they're both kind of, they're both excellent guitars. You know, Pete Townsend played live at Leeds on a Gibson SG Special. So Special, I think, is right under this, and it's just a little more bare bones. And then a tribute might be the one with P90s on it. I'll have to, you might, or it might be the other way around, but you might want to check on that. But when you hit the standard, this is kind of a proper, full-fledged flagship model Les Paul. And then you can go up. You know, they've got the Les Paul Custom and the Murphy's Slab, and I don't even bother to look at those because I'm not going to buy one. So why? But I don't know why. Maybe I hope this isn't a crude analogy, but I always think Fender's kind of like Mary Ann, and Gibson's kind of like Ginger. You know, just beautiful. You get to just like it's like going from beer to champagne. And there's nothing wrong with beer, by the way. You might prefer beer to champagne. So, but this is a little classier. But a couple of the differences are, I think this. I'd have to look at the 60s, but one of the differences is the tuning gears here are, I was going to call that plastic, but maybe that's too low of a term, but perloid or something. But that's those kind of plastic-looking tuners. In the 60s model, you get a chrome tuner, and if I were going to change anything on this guitar, I might swap out the tuners to chrome tuners, which I'm not going to do. I'm not going to change anything on this guitar. But and the other thing is it's got a little fatter neck. So, and you know, when I play this guitar, I feel like it makes me a better player because when I pick it up and play it, it kind of makes me very aware of my attack, my touch, my all the things that make for nice playing. Maybe it's just because it's a little different than I'm used to. It does have a little different feel than my Fenders. But and sometimes I notice it's a little it's a little harder for me to play. I was playing it the other night and I noticed I was missing notes that I feel like I normally wouldn't miss on my old tellies or something. But super nice. And on the other hand, it kind of kicks your butt a little bit to play up your game a little bit. And you could see Martin and Gibson are the two great old American guitar companies. If you really think about it, as nice as Fender is, Fender is a company, from the 40s? Gibson's been around since before World War I, as an acoustic instrument. I forget the exact date of Gibson's founding, but if they weren't around in the late 1800s, they were an important company by the early 1900s. And I'll stand corrected. I think they were around in the 1800s. So they're kind of like Martin. Martin's even older, but Gibson's an excellent company. And they're also kind of like Martin, and for all the ups and downs of markets and changes in music, they've kind of kept the tradition going, I think, pretty strongly, kind of like Martin has. They have their updated models, and they innovate in some areas, but they also kind of keep a tradition. Some people might say that makes Gibson's kind of staid and hidebound. That's maybe why kids don't like them. On the other hand, you've got a heritage like that. That's you can't buy that. It's like, I don't know if I'm that into brand names, but, if you get a brand name, a good brand name stands for something, and you can't really buy it. It comes from time and people using it over decades and decades. That's what makes a good brand. You can't just sort of buy a brand with advertising or something, not one that's really going to last. And Gibson has a brand, and it's got a legacy, and I think they've kept that up. But one thing another thing I will say about it is that, people would always criticize Gibson, and I played a few too where I couldn't seem to get it in tune. I've played a couple like that, but this thing tunes great. It was just been, I hadn't played it in quite a while. I pulled it out of the case and it was in good tune. And then I just tweaked it a little bit with my Fender guitar tuner, and it was an excellent tune. And I was playing in like open G chord type shapes and also open E chord positions. And I always think that some of those kind of chords down here, like E's and G's, even when you play like old blues and G, but if you're playing a lot of stuff off G chord positions and E chord positions, it's not as forgiving. If you're having trouble tuning, that's an area where you're really going to notice it. And this thing seems to tune pretty well. So, I haven't, it tunes great and it plays super well. It's just a joy to play, really. And like I said, it's different enough. It makes me feel kind of like a different guitar player. And I like to play old Clapton blues. I'm going to upload some old Cream blues because when I think of Gibson, I think of old Clapton, old school Clapton. When he was so associated with like the Gibson ES-335, but also the Les Paul and the Firebird. He used to play a lot of Gibsons in the '60s, and and I think lately you see him with the Gibsons more than you did. He's got a Gibson L5, I think, on the cover of the Concert for Bangladesh, and you see him. But all those years he was so almost exclusively associated with the Strat, And but whenever I pick this thing up, I always want to play some Cream or some old blues breakers or something. But in particular, Cream. That and the ES335 always makes me think of Cream. But it's just a really nice guitar. And a few years ago, I think there was a lot of criticism of Gibson. I mean, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and you could see all these videos on the Gibson G-string problem and their quality control. And I don't know anything about it, but Mark Agnesi became the CEO of Gibson, and I always kind of liked him because he seemed like a guitar guy. He wasn't so much a money guy. I'm sure he's sensible with money, but he was a guitar guy. He was a music guy because I used to watch him on Norm's Rare Guitars, and I don't know if he when he first came in, I watched several interviews with him, and I decided I liked him pretty well. And but he had big plans for Gibson, but he also was just kind of we're going to stay the course and just do what we do better than anybody else and make sure we do it well, and I interpreted that to mean that, they were going to really work on quality control. And this thing, and I bought this is a more recent guitar, and it's beautiful. The Les Paul standard 60s, another, they have the chrome tuners, which kind of look cooler, and the chrome tuners kind of look cooler, and I don't know, they have the illusion to me of being a better tuner, but because these look plastic, but I don't think that's the case. These seem to work great. So, but the other thing about the 60s, there was another color that almost got me, and it was as a heritage cherry or something. It's like a cherry finish, cherry red finish, in that 60s model that you could get. And Eric Clapton and Tommy plays that red Les Paul, and I think it's one he used in the Rainbow concert too. So you see him with the red Les Paul, and I don't know if it's the exact finish, but that red was pretty tempting. And if I ever have another urge to buy another Les Paul, I need it like a hole in the head. But if I ever would succumb to the temptation, I might have to go with that Gibson Les Paul standard 60s, that one in red. That looked pretty sweet too. I think the neck's a little thinner on that too. So, but if it's anything like this, it's an excellent guitar. But these standards are kind of that's when I always say there's always a mid-level point. There's always kind of one where it's like the old American standard in Fender too. That's where you kind of there's really nothing paired off, and then there's always an upsell, It's good business. There's always an upsell, some bells and whistles, some fancier finishes or something like that. But when you hit the standard line, you're pretty much with the proper, full-fledged Gibson Les Paul. And I'm so glad I bought this, and I'm going to play it more often. I get so busy, and and sometimes when you play by yourself, I tend to reach for the acoustic, since I've been playing by myself more. But this thing's a joy to play, and it's a very good blues guitar. The Gibson Les Paul is a very good blues guitar, and it's more versatile than you might think. Some people people think of Telecasters as being so versatile, but it's a very versatile guitar. So I definitely recommend it. The other thing I'll say about this is when I bought it, it was had a great setup. And the intonation was perfect. And I was almost wondered if, I had called the store where they had it, and I said I was going to come down and look at it. And and it's about an hour drive. So when I got there, the thing was like perfect. I almost wondered if while in my hour drive down there, if a tech or something set it up and intonated it just to, be on the safe side. Because when I picked it up, it seems like it's ready to go. I wouldn't want to change anything about this guitar. It plays super well. The intonation is spot on, It's dead on, and which is kind of funny because, whenever I thought of Gibson, that was one prejudice I had against Gibson is you couldn't tune them, And a lot of times, and I even had a Gibson ES335 where right around, I could never get the G string in tune, and it also had you'd kind of fret out in a couple spots, and you think, well, I spent a lot of money on this, and something else. When I buy a new guitar, I'm not much for fixing it. I know some people say, well, it's not that big a deal to fix it, but to me, when you spend a lot of money on a nice guitar, you shouldn't have to fix anything about it. If it's fretting out or something, because then when you start fixing it, if it's not quite right or something, you never know, and you're just better off buying one that's everything works on it right away, in my opinion. But definitely a nice guitar, and certainly beautiful. 10. Is that mahogany? It's heavy. And you know what? I like a little heavier guitar. The other weird thing about it is it's little, so it's not that comfortable for me to play. There's something about the shape of it. It does kind of dive bomb on you, and I never quite, when I've got a strap on, I'm never quite as relaxed. I feel like I'm always kind of hefting it up a little bit. I don't mind the weight. My Gibson ES335 is kind of a big, heavy guitar, but for some reason being big and heavy is better than being little and heavy. Little and heavy seems to make it a little awkward to play. Sometimes the ergonomics of playing, I just have to fish around for a more comfortable position. You have to be a little more careful about how you're sitting and all that kind of thing with this guitar. But other than that, excellent, excellent. Thanks. God bless. By the way, as I'm filming this, it's early January 2026, so Happy New Year, and God bless you all. And buy a nice guitar this year. Let's keep the music alive in 2026, huh? Thanks.